There was once a kingdom that ruled the land. For centuries it stood, proud and grand. But a prince and his wife concocted a ploy, a scheme to besiege, to wreck, to destroy. Over the past few weeks, specifically since the announcement that Meghan and Harry have indeed been invited to the coronation, there has been an exponential increase in expressions of disappointment and dismay by the people of England and the Commonwealth, directed not at the Montecito couple, but at the king himself. I've been seeing it everywhere. In the comment section of any YouTube video that discusses the royal family and the Sussexes, in news articles, reports, the people of the UK specifically have made it incredibly clear that they are not happy in the slightest with the king, who has now been dubbed by a few as a weak king. There are people who have canceled their trips to the coronation because they're just so disenchanted by King Charles. They're sick and tired of the leeway that he's been giving the Sussexes. I recently made a video called The Traitor, which discusses this entire topic about why King Charles shouldn't be inviting the Sussexes at all. So I'm not gonna get into that right now. I've said my piece, but that video was made before the official announcement that they were indeed invited, which I suppose a lot of us expected that outcome anyway. So all the arguments presented in that video ring hollow at this point. We already know that arrangements are being made for their attendance. Now that doesn't necessarily mean they will be coming, because they're making a sport out of keeping the media in suspense, I suppose. You know, are they coming or are they not? They seem to be quite enjoying that game because they refuse to give an answer. Now some commentators say, oh, it's because they genuinely don't know. I don't buy that. I think Meghan would never pass up a chance to be, number one, associated with the royal family, to refill that clout gauge that's very quickly running out, especially in the US now. But secondly, any chance to be in front of the cameras, make headline news, because unfortunately, that is the reality of the situation. They will absolutely make headline news if they show up. But can I quickly point out how pathetic this game they're playing is? I mean, it's so transparent. And it reveals them for the hypocrites and the liars. Again, right after naming their children Prince and Princess. Despite the Oprah claims, despite Meghan revealing herself to be a liar, they're once again doing that by doing things that deliberately put them in the news, in the headlines, when all they've done is complain about that very fact. I mean, at this point, I think we all know what they're complaining about is, you're not worshiping us. Anything short of that is unacceptable. Rumor has it that there's another reason they haven't accepted, or officially, I suppose, declared whether they're going to show up or not, and that's because they're trying to get the upper hand by apparently negotiating. And by negotiating, I mean, you meet all of our demands if you want us to show up. Do you smell that entitlement? I do wonder whether they're hesitant and weighing it up, trying to decide, is it worth going there and getting booed? Should we use Archie's birthday as an excuse not to show up? Which, I find that very hard to buy, as a credible possibility, because like I said, Meghan is shameless. I mean, that's what one of my most recent videos was called. She has no shame. She has no dignity. She doesn't care how hypocritical she comes across, how much of a liar people expose her as, and whether she gets booed or not. She's just going to use it for more victimhood and selling magazine articles and making more reality shows. Let's not forget, for people like her, bad publicity is better than no publicity. The British monarchy, or more specifically, King Charles's reputation, is in jeopardy. And what's interesting to me is the realization on my part, and I could be wrong, that it's not because of what Meghan and Harry have been actively doing to wage a war against the monarchy, but rather it's because of King Charles's actions or inaction. What these two have been doing, Meghan and Harry, over the past 3 years is make a mockery out of the monarchy. Not because people are buying what they're selling, because, I mean, literally, they are buying what they're selling. the book, tuning into the series and whatnot, but they're not believing what they're saying anymore. People are just watching because it's a damn train wreck. But the mockery arises when people watch from the sidelines this ancient institution that has survived for over 1,000 years get belittled and disparaged and attacked day after day after day by two insignificant, petulant, middle-aged, spoiled brats. And the monarchy just responds by turning the other cheek and taking it and taking it and taking it. Yes, you can argue that the Frogmore Cottage eviction was an act of retaliation, especially given the timing of it all, you know, the day after Spare was released. But in the grand scheme of things, the way it's playing out, at least the way I see it, is Meghan and Harry are still coming out on top. They still get to title their children as prince and princess. They still get to make millions upon millions out of disparaging their own family and the very institution that gave them a global platform. So it's kind of difficult to argue that one eviction outweighs all the benefits that Meghan and Harry have been experiencing from this career of victimhood. The problem is, what's becoming incredibly clear is that no one likes to see hypocrites and liars and grifters get away with wrongdoing, with misdeeds. But I suppose the interesting question that led to this video is, are they indeed getting away with it? We'll revisit that. But first, let's discuss how the monarchy isn't really doing too well at present. The announcement that Meghan and Harry's children have become prince and princess couldn't have come at a worse time for King Charles. Because what's happened is people have mistakenly blamed him for allowing it to happen. They think that he was the one who bestowed these titles upon them, which isn't what happened. And I have made a video, again, very recently, discussing the letters patent of 1917 and why the children got their titles. But the fact that the children were entitled to these titles hasn't assuaged the discontent of many out there, including renowned author Tom Bower, who wrote an autobiography on the then Prince Charles back in 2018, I believe. Now, Tom Bower and others like him believe the king to be weak for not intervening soon enough and amending the letters patent to stop the Sussexes from passing on the titles to their children, and even his failure altogether to strip the Sussexes themselves of their titles.
Well, I think this is a very sad indication of King Charles's weakness. He should have signed the letters which prevented them taking the titles.
Now, in fairness to Charles, it is worth noting that the line of succession page on the official royal family website wasn't even updated to reflect these changes until Meghan and Harry's announcement through a tabloid, through People magazine. I mean, talk about cheap. Talk about cheapening the monarchy. Announcing royal UK titles in an American tabloid. Legacy of Meghan Markle. But the fact that the palace updated the titles after that announcement makes you think that they were blindsided as well. They were never told, and perhaps King Charles and the palace were holding their breath and hoping that maybe they're not going to give their children titles. Alas, if they thought that, they clearly don't know Meghan Markle in the slightest. And I don't know her personally. The audience doesn't. Everyone who talks about her doesn't personally know her, but she's so transparent that she has become entirely predictable. Now, the reason I say the announcement couldn't have come at a worse time for the king is because his subjects are already weary. They're not exactly thrilled at the way that he's been handling the Sussexes at all. And this, of course, includes inviting them to the coronation, not stripping them of their titles, even though the latter is a decision up to Parliament, but the king can definitely be involved and push it and instigate it. But essentially, things aren't looking too good in terms of the king's reputation. This isn't from anti-monarchists. It's very important to point it out. People who are canceling plans to the coronation, people who are planning on boycotting the coronation and pretending it's not going to happen, these are all loyal subjects who have lost respect or are starting to lose respect for the monarchy because of the king. And what's very concerning about this is this was almost anticipated by people. As far back as when the Queen was alive, people wondered whether the monarchy could even exist long after her passing, because many saw Charles as, dare I say, unfit to be king based on his personality. Tom Bauer says that he is one of the most indecisive people, and it's coming across in the coronation planning as well. He's unable to decide on what many would think are insignificant decisions. What people want to see is a king, and a king is first and foremost a leader of his people and an example. When you think king, you think someone strong, you think someone decisive. You think at some times, especially when his subjects or his sovereignty are threatened, someone who is ruthless, quick to action. And we're not seeing any of that with the current king. And like I mentioned in The Traitor, the coronation specifically is a state affair. So regardless of how Charles may be personally feeling about wanting his son there, because I don't know if he wants Meghan there, but it is very reasonable to assume that he wants his own child there. But by inviting his son and his wayward wife, the message he may have even inadvertently sent to his subjects, to his people, is that he's placing his own feelings as a father before his duty as king, and the latter should be taking priority. Queen Elizabeth was notorious for her dedication to duty, putting it before her role as mother, as wife, and even as grandmother. And that's why she was so successful. That's why she was so well loved and respected. Unfortunately, barely a few months into his reign, and it just doesn't look like the king is able to measure up to his late mother, who admittedly is a very tough act to follow. But here's the irony of it all. The destruction isn't limited to the monarchy itself, because now that Meghan and Harry have declared their children to be prince and princess, we can all see through that charade of hating the monarchy and wanting to get rid of it. I truly believe that that's what they wanted for a while. But when you see them hanging on to their titles, when you see them passing on titles to their children, you start to see right through them and understand that they don't want the monarchy to be abolished, because they know that their entire worth as a global commodity is directly tied to the monarchy's existence. Without those titles, they're just uninteresting, unintelligent, talentless, and vapid grifters. And no one would give two hoots what they have to say if they weren't the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Meghan knows this for a fact, because no one gave two hoots what she had to say before she met Harry. So Meghan, out of everyone, you would think, is a staunch monarchist, because without them, she's nothing. And her children, why else would she pass on the titles to her children? To monetize the titles, to merch off her own children. Is that really shocking though? This is a woman who is basically leaving her father for dead. Her father who gave her everything, who sacrificed so much to raise her and give her the life that he believed she deserved, which was a pretty good life. Now, interestingly, Tom Bauer has been saying for quite a while that Meghan is a threat to the monarchy. And I never agreed with him, because I never took Meghan that seriously. I truly don't believe that she is enough of a threat, especially now, given her joke of a reputation at this point. I truly don't see how someone like her could be taken seriously enough to bring down the monarchy. Maybe once upon a time, right at the beginning of Megxit, right around the time of the Oprah interview, but she did what she does best and destroyed herself on a global stage, to the point where her word amounts to nothing. She's become a joke, and she knows it. But she's shameless, because that big Cheshire grin on her face indicates that she doesn't care. The way I see it is, it's two sides of the same coin. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, by extension, are indeed contributing to, if not the destruction of the monarchy, at least a significant hit to its reputation, specifically in the eyes of its loyal subjects. But they didn't do it intentionally. To summarize this video, essentially, they lit the fire, but the king's inability to extinguish the fire is what's taking down the monarchy, not the fire itself. The fire isn't strong enough to do it. But if he lets it burn and burn and burn as his people watch, eventually it'll just turn to ashes. And since Meghan and Harry's entire worth, as I said, is tied to the existence of the monarchy, they're just going to end up going down with it. And such is the ironic tale of the prince and his wife who tried to bring down the monarchy and only ended up taking themselves down with it. If the monarchy goes down, because there may yet be hope. Charles may take action. He may be able to rehabilitate his image and prove to his people that, enough is enough, and he can take swift action when need be. We're still waiting. We're still hopeful. He's not hopeless yet. He's not Meghan and Harry. But yeah, I am quite interested to see how the rest of this plays out. Will the monarchy survive? Will it pass on to William? Will it get to a point where Charles will be so unpopular that he may abdicate? Anything's possible. Guess we'll just have to wait and see. Leo, are you scratching the door? My cat's scratching the door.